Hi guys, so today's video is going to be week 3 of the Blood of Elves read along, and I'm so excited because we are so close to the end. I'm gonna admit that I have far less tabs this time around. I only had a couple because I primarily listened to the audiobook, but there were a couple of specific things that stood out to me. So I'm gonna start with not the negatives, but just stuff that I am interested in hearing your opinions on, and it kind of has to do with Sapkowski's storytelling devices and his writing style. So the first thing I want to chat about is something that I mentioned in the first week of the read along, and that would be when Sapkowski follows characters that aren't particularly main characters or even side characters. They're kind of just players in the story, and they affect events that occur with our main characters, but they're really not prominent characters. And for me, I mean, obviously there's different ways to tell stories, and he is utilizing the fact that the narrator can just about see anybody and it's omniscient, but I didn't love the really long section with the kings and queen of these other countries, and basically they're just discussing their war plans and the significance of Ciri and getting Sintra and trying to defend themselves against Nilfgaard. That whole part, while I found it interesting, I would say I found it more interesting reading this for not the first time. I still just want to get back to our characters. Are you all like that too? I kind of just thinking, can we get back to Geralt? Can we get back to Ciri? And I don't love spending so much time with these other individuals. Something else that actually one of you brought up, and I agree, and I actually tabbed a spot that I think kind of shows this pretty well, is that sometimes Sapkowski has sentences that are really, really long, which, because of how he writes, they sort of read like somebody talking, like a person telling you a story, and they're not so... He's very witty, and it doesn't read really dense, is I guess what I'm trying to say. And when I'm listening to the audiobook, of course, then it's not as noticeable. But there was this one particular sentence that I think kind of shows how long some of his sentences last for, and I'm definitely really curious your thoughts on, do you think sometimes some of his sentences you don't love? I know this is extra picky, but I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just something to reflect on and get your opinions on. But I'm gonna read this one sentence because it lasts for a while. It says, the poet, it's talking about Dandelion, the poet rode slowly along a muddy, crowded street, passing workshops, studios, stalls, shops, small and large, where, thanks to the Academy, tens of thousands of articles and wonderful things were produced and sold, which were unattainable in other corners of the world where their production was considered impossible or pointless. That's a long sentence. I wouldn't say I'm extremely extra picky, and I personally like there being a variety in different authors' writing styles, but I do think that it's something to discuss, and it's something to note, because for some people, when they go into the Witcher series, they're not expecting this writing style that can kind of sort of feel like it's not as concise, and it feels like a person not rambling, but just chatting, because when we speak, we don't stop at nice points and we don't vary our sentence structure as we're talking. So I think it is reflecting that, but it can be, I suppose, very off-putting for some people, and maybe for other people they can totally love it. Okay, that stuff aside, let's get into the story itself. And the first thing is, I personally thought it was so funny that Geralt, when he sent this letter to Yennefer, had no idea how to address it and just put like dear friend, and then so constantly throughout the letter she's like, because we're dear friends and my dear friend, and she just constantly was mocking him. Super funny. It's one of those things that is a subtle way to let you know exactly the kind of person the character is. I loved it. I am a little bit sad because we were fairly forward in how the story was being told, in that we were constantly following Ciri and Triss and Geralt for a while, and then all of a sudden there's this big lapse in time, and we have moved forward. Ciri and Geralt are no longer even together. We don't get a scene of them saying goodbye. We just get this letter between them, which the letter with Ciri also is really adorable and hilarious, but we have this huge jump. I'm very curious if that jump bothered any of you, if you would have liked more time with the two of them together, or if you thought it was perfectly fine and you didn't really need that. I personally love Geralt and Ciri together, so it is a little bit of a bummer that we in this section really didn't get that, and we really didn't get any Ciri. But I do like that we have finally gotten Geralt's perspective back. We got it in an interesting way because we get him on this boat, and he's sort of kind of trying to set a trap for this person that he now knows is trying to follow him and find him. So that whole part, it was entertaining, and I always like when we get a little bit of the Witcher side of Geralt because he's talking about the monster and everything on the boat. But I would imagine maybe for people that are first reading it, they might feel a little bit disoriented and kind of feel like, well, why are we all of a sudden here? Because it eventually tells you what Geralt was doing. But I feel like if it had been I don't remember how I felt the first time I read it, but I would imagine that I would feel like it's almost the beginning of a new story. I honestly don't know if I have a lot more to say about this section. So much of this section is laying the groundwork for events to come and introducing us to characters that are going to play a pretty significant role in things. You can kind of see that. You can see how these people are going to matter more later. And I think that it's really interesting to start to see happen, but it's not necessarily interesting in the moment, I don't think. So this section has times when it was super funny or super entertaining, especially with Dandelion and Geralt. And like I said, I really liked the letters, but it just feels like so much setup, which is okay. I mean, it's a long series and there are a lot of things to come, but I don't know that it's the most fun, entertaining of sections that we've had thus far. I think honestly though that I'm just gonna leave it at that. I'm excited to get to the end of this book. I hope you've all been really enjoying it. Let me know, I'll put up a little poll. Let me know what your thoughts have been as far as your enjoyment of the story so far. I hope that you're all really liking it. I think that there are things about this first one that make it not my favorite entry in the series. There are moments that I absolutely love, but then there are moments that kind of drag a little bit for me. So hopefully you don't feel that way. Hopefully you're absolutely loving it all the way across. But anyway, I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you all later. Bye.